Wow, listen to how quiet that is. That's how calm it is before the storm. Okay, and so with that in mind, today's video was actually inspired by a video that I watched by Doug and Stacy off Grid, where Doug was talking about a executive order that came down, and this executive order essentially sets up the groundwork for a surveillance society. Now, if another president comes in and he wants to take that away, he can, but he probably and most likely will not. So what we're going to be talking about today is how do you navigate a surveillance society? And so one of the first things, and I'm going to give you several different tips, but one of the first things that you should do and really work on is blending in. You want to be able to dress like those that you're being around, those that you're hanging around. It's part of assimilating. So if you are hanging around a lot of houses and you're homeless, well then you better be washed up, clean cut, walk around. Nobody should really know that you're homeless except for you and the people that you got to sleep around. Assimilating and blending in works a couple of ways, and it can work for you and it can work against you. You know, when I was in Portland, there was a time where they had a warrant out for a guy, and the cops come rolling in, and I mean they're flying through the park in their jump out, because the guy fit the description, jumps out, points the gun at him, tells him to get out on his ground, so on and so forth. Come to find out, it was mistaken identity because the person who committed the crime looked like just about everybody else. So it's very hard when you blend in for them to say, oh, that was him, because you look a lot like everybody else. And so even black people, they want to get offended, but it actually works to their advantage when white people or other colors just say, don't you all look the same? Well, that's what you want to do, is you want to look the same like everybody else around you so that you can blend in, so that when it comes to just like low-level surveillance, if they're looking for you, they can't find you because you're blending in and you're looking like everybody else. The second thing that you're probably going to want to do to avoid surveillance society is you're going to want to create an alias. Consider it like a dual personality. The reason why you'd want to create a dual personality is because there are things that you do that the government may not approve of, like reading books or having an alternative point of view or seeing the world a different way. Right now we're being told just because of your political ideology, because you support this particular politician for president, that you were therefore considered an enemy of the state. And so it's a matter of time before all of us get labeled as enemies of the state. And in technicality, the Trading with the Enemies Act of 1917 was amended in 1940 to include U.S. citizens. When it comes to operating in the public, you do want to operate under an alias, whether it be an LLC if you're doing commerce, or whether it be an alias such as I go by Friar Tuck. I make sure that everything that I send out, including the account that's tied to this, that it has no legal information about my legal name, because I want to have the alias. Because as I go around, people can say, are you Friar Tuck, or are you the hobo prepper? I can say, I don't know. I don't even know who you're talking about, because the name and the name and the alias are separate. And so the alias has one mode, the people that he talks to, that I do business with, that are part of my inner circle. Those people know me by my alias and my legal name because they're in my inner circle. I can trust them. But the thing is once you get out of that inner circle, if you want to be able to operate anonymously, you're going to have to operate under an alias. And you may, if depending upon how adamant you are about this, because this right here is an enforcement of your Fourth Amendment right, the right to privacy and to not have unlawful search and seizure. When it comes to surveillance, that is a violation of your Fourth Amendment right, and if you're going to assert it, you're going to have to assert it in some ways Soviet style. And we have a lot of lessons that we right now we're still at the beginning stages of surveillance society. There are still lots of strides to go to be able to locate and navigate us. One of the things that I would strongly recommend is that you probably are going to want to keep a Faraday cage for your cell phone or any electronic devices, especially your laptop, because all of that can be tracked. So as soon as you pull yourself off the internet, as soon as you get done doing whatever business you need to do on your brick, then you put it inside that Faraday cage. They can't find it. You can't find it. But the thing is with the digital currency, they're still going to be able to know that you have it. And they're probably going to put a lot more surveillance on you. So again, you might want to be looking at maybe, we'll talk about this one next, which will be cash. But being able to curb your electronics will keep them from being able to, as the technology advances, it will keep them from being able to monitor and track you where you go. So if, for example, certain things you want to pass a note, you may have to act and plan a trip as if you're going somewhere else, and along the way you drop it in an inconspicuous manner, whether it be in passing to to somebody in a grocery store that was preordained to meet. These types of things, you're going to have to do, and you're probably going to have to really learn how to communicate with those that are part of your circle, those that are part of who you really closely associate with. You're gonna need to be able to figure out forms of communication. I was raised in the '80s, so it wasn't until the mid 2000s to early 2010s that I even got to see a cell phone. Now, I remember how it was to be able to communicate. Some of you people, because I've looked at the demographics, you don't remember, you don't know what it was like to live without a cell phone, and you are the people that are going to suffer the most. So make sure that you start learning how to read maps. Make sure that you understand how to navigate yourself, whether it be looking at the stars or having a compass on you so that you know kind of what direction you're going. But a compass and a map will do you so much more than what a cell phone can do, because you're tied. Number to 4 service. Is going to be, as I said in the last segment, it's going to be cash. Okay, so cash is important because cash is something that you cannot track. It is much harder to track it. Now, they have to keep an eye on the serial numbers. I will tell you that each bill has a serial number. That serial number is tied to a bond, and that's kind of how they do their tracking. And so if you're looking to be completely autonomous, you're not autonomous, because cash can still be tracked. However, it's much harder, it requires much more diligence, and it requires an actual effort. And so if you're flying below the radar, you operating in cash should not be a big deal until all of a sudden you come up above the radar, and then at that point in time, you're in trouble. Okay? And so in a surveillance society, some of the things in the transactions that you may want to do. So let's say I do some work for you, but I want you to pay me, but I want to keep it completely off of the books and out of the transaction so that it can't be actually monitored. So I tell you, there's this bike over here. This bike's $600. That's what you owe me for the work that I did. So why don't you go buy me that bike? So I'm going to take that bike, and now I have it. Now I can keep it, or I can sell it. And if I keep it, it's a gift, and as a gift, the person buying it from you paid the sales tax, but you're not paying the federal tax. In some ways, it is a way to be able to skirt around, because you may not have the necessary bartered item, but you do have the cash or credits to be able to buy that item, and then they can take that to somewhere on the black market and get cash for it. That way, everybody is able to remain autonomous, because the black market, the more the surveillance society expands, the bigger and more prevalent the black market will be. If you want a perfect example, look at what happened in France as they imposed all of those social programs. You couldn't actually get a job until you were 27 years old because of the way it was. And so if you're under 27 in France, at least many years ago, if they have fixed it, what they would do is the younger generation was part of the black market, and then as they got older and were able to be old enough to be able to get a job because of everything that was going on there, this is kind of how their society moved. And we can take a page out of their book. Is you may have to, if you want cash, you may have to have that person buy you something and then you take it out on the black market. And if you're doing things for somebody that they may not want known, then you have the ability to say, look, on the black market, this is what I'm going to get. I'm going to get $600 for this $1,200 bike. So I want this $1,200 bike. Well, now they have to pay that extra fee. It's not coming out of you, so on and so forth. But this is a way for you to be able to conduct business, not only on the black market, but to be able to conduct it without government observation. Number 5, the one I think is probably the most important, is keeping your head low. In a surveillance society, the last thing you want to do is get yourself caught up. So, for example, I watched an article by Glenn Beck. This guy, him and his son, went to a abortion rally, an anti-abortion rally in front of a clinic. Well, they weren't doing anything in front of the clinic. They stood away from the clinic. They weren't blocking anybody, and they were praying for these people, you know, which is their First Amendment right. And whether you agree with it or not, it doesn't matter. They have the right to express themselves how they see fit, as long as they're not doing any harm or damage to any property. Well, what ends up happening is that one of the activists ends up cornering this guy's son, and he ends up getting in between the guy and the son, and he ends up pushing the guy out, and the guy was a flopper, so he just, oh, you know, I'm paying, da da da, and this guy ends up in court, and he gets acquitted of all the charges. They end up dropping the charges because nobody in their right mind is going to charge a parent for any type of crime when they're in protecting their child. And so because of that, the FBI decided, well, they're going to come in and they're going to raid the person. And so they showed up, and they kicked in the door. He's like, hey, I got kids, so on and so forth. If you want to see the story, I'll put the link in the description, but I'm not going to talk too much more about it. What I will say that is, if the guy would have kept a low profile, if you can't get involved in the stuff that's going on, as much as you may agree with it or disagree with it. Again, like I said, you have to take it out of the Soviet playbook. They keep their politics and their opinions close to their chest. They don't share them with anybody because you don't know who's going to inform on you. You don't know if you're going to be put in a situation where you may be compromised. And so instead of putting yourself in that situation, you're just going to have to sit there. And I think this is in some ways what will cause a silent civil war, is that people will just get fed up. They will clam up, they will draw in, and they will talk within their community, and things will be passed along, and the people will feel the way that they feel. At the same time, no resistance will ever be able to be mounted because of the overwhelming power and the indoctrination of its servile employees into their system. And so there is no way to be able to fight the system. You only have the ability to get out of the system and try and, just keep your head low. That's the most important part. Keep your head low. And here's one more thing, and this is a bonus tip. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share. If I have links down in the description if you want to know more about some of the stuff that I use, yada yada yada. But anyways, here's a bonus one for you guys. Whenever you deal with any types of cops, so one of the things that stood out to me in the Glenn Beck video that's down in the description is that the wife said, if you're going to take him without a warrant, then that is kidnapping. See, the thing is, when you're interacting with police officers, there's only 2 things that you can do that will keep you safe. The first one is to ask questions. And sometimes when you need to make a statement, you're asking it in a question format. You have to be very tactful. It requires a lot of thought. It requires command of language. It requires you to actually be somewhat intelligent in the interaction, because you're gonna get into a very dangerous game with cops. And I've done it, and I'm telling you, it's fun when the cops beat red and he can't do anything, but it's not fun when he trips you up, because it's a game and you're playing a game, and it's a dangerous game. But when you're dealing with police officers, it's you cannot make definitive statements. You should be asking questions. You should be giving them offers and counter offers. So would you step out of the car? Okay, well, if you use the word if, or okay, I will on these conditions, you still have the ability to remain in control. Okay, I have no problem getting out of the car, but I want to make sure that your body cam is on, and I want to know, I need all the information because I may need to subpoena that. So, if you can give me that information, I have no problem getting out of the car, officer. Now, are you refusing any type of command? No, you're not. You're giving him a counteroffer saying, yes, I will completely comply with you, but I want this for my own security first. Just like when you go and you do an interview with somebody, especially like Jordan Peterson, he wants the full tape because they're going to cut it up and they're going to splice it to look the way he wants it to. The podcaster wants it to look, not from what was actually said, and this happens on a regular basis. So it's not out of the norm for you to ask, well, is your body cam on? How do I get that footage? Because I'm going to need to subpoena it. After that, yeah, sure, let's go ahead. Because at this point in time, you're putting them on notice. Because in the same way that the lady said, if you take him without a warrant, then it's kidnapping. She gave them a counter offer of, okay, so fine, you're going to take him, but you do it without a warrant, then I have the right to charge you with kidnapping. That is why they turned around, went out to the car, and got the warrant. Because they could have been put in a criminal element. It would completely destroy everything that they've got. That is contaminating a case. Now, the wife was smart enough to be able to think about that. Okay, and she was able to come up with that and say that in a hairy situation. And, you know, hats off to you, lady. You're very smart. You saved your husband's butt because those agents were telling her, we don't need a warrant. We can do whatever the hell we want. Well, no, you can't. Because that statement that she made shows that they are just as accountable as you. They just want you to think that they're not held accountable. So just realize, and this is a big problem, especially with federal agents, is that they really like to overstep their boundaries. Them lying to you and trapping you, it's perfectly legal for them to do it, even if they're tainting everything. I'll just leave it at that. But anyways, guys, these are some tips that you can do that will help you survive a surveillance society, plus a bonus tip. So I hope that you enjoy this, and like, subscribe, share. I'll see you in the next video.